Good morning. Good morning, members and friends of the UCC Church in Corvallis, Oregon. I'm Donna Schaper. I so wish I was going to be with you in person today, and obviously this is the second best to be recording from my home church, Judson Memorial. I'm really looking forward to working with you all on your bricks. Really looking forward to working with you on how mortal you are, and about bricks and mortals, and how we come into right relationship there. This will be the beginning and kind of the opening gambit on what I know is a complex problem for everyone. How do we use our buildings in the most godly possible ways and not let them become idols? My first text for today will be the one from John, where Jesus gets in trouble with the Pharisees. They are baiting him. They're setting him up. They want him to say something that will get people mad, and he does it. There are many scholars that think that this text about how he was going to tear down the temple, destroy it, and then build it up in 3 days. There are many scholars that think this is the one that got him sent to the cross. This is the one that did it. Just showing how important our temples are to us, how important our physicality is to us, how important our buildings are to us. And so the scribes and Pharisees, the religious authorities of their day, who were even more important than the political authorities in that time, the religious authorities set him up and said, "What is that you said about destroying our temple? How could you have said that?" And Jesus said, "Yeah, I said that because you're not in right relationship with your temple. You're not in right relationship with your building. You think it's more important than God is. You have idolatrized your building." And then he goes on to say, "So I'm going to destroy it, and then I'm going to build it back up in 3 days." He never says that we can't have temples, but he says we have to be in right relationship to them. And the second text, which almost sounds contradictory, but it's Paul's language in one of his many epistles. He uses it in lots of different ways. He says that we are bodily treasures in earthen vessels. It's a way of trying to help people see that the pot that holds the soup is good, and that the soup or the bread or the wine in the cup, the contents are holy. They're a treasure in an earthen vessel. We think about Christmas early this year. Just let me say that all of Christian theology is right there. Jesus is a treasure in an earthen vessel. God become human, God become man. We call it incarnation, where the spirit and the flesh combine, where earth and heaven connect, where God and humanity connect, where Jesus is God's almost last chance for humanity. He says, you don't get who I am. I'm going to show you in the ideal human who will have a body, who will live, who will die, who will be a spiritually realized human. Jesus, the true human, the full human, the best human, and he is in an earthen vessel. So here we have, on the one hand, Jesus coming on strong with the religious authorities about the negative aspects, the misuse of buildings, and then we have Paul, his great propaganda artist, Paul coming along and saying, oh, it's a treasure, a building is a treasure of spirit being held in an earthen vessel. A body is holy. It is a treasure in an earthen vessel, and of course it's limited in what it can carry, and of course it dies, and of course it breaks, but it's still a spiritual treasure. So with you today, I want to use a metaphor that I've come up with. I think it was a gift from the Holy Spirit, and I say removethepews.com as a way of being faithful to both of these texts. And what I mean by it is mostly theological. I think we've got to get the pews out of our heads. Just get them out of our heads. We have to open up new space for new religious expression, new spiritual expression. My God, if COVID has taught us anything, it's taught us that we have to pivot our pivots. Every day, all day long, was Rosh Hashanah, the day that I'm taping this. My mother-in-law, who is Jewish, said, the rabbi's going to come and blow the shofar. I'm going to have a little piece at my assisted living place. And she's divided the whole long service into little parts that we can get virtually on our phones. And she's doing all of the long Rosh Hashanah service differently. Isn't that wonderful, said this 95-year-old to me. And this is what I'm trying to say to you. We all know that a lot of people have wanted us to worship virtually for a long time. And guess what? Younger people are finally showing up to church. They're just not coming into our buildings. I wonder why. Because pews give people the feeling of, same old, sit up straight, be uncomfortable, don't move, don't be real, dress up. Pews give you a sense that God is somehow the captive of the space. Pulpits, too. Pulpits imply that I'm smart and you're dumb spiritually, or I know things and you don't spiritually. If there is anything to our new world of virtual living and online living that is good, it's the genuine interactivity and fluidity of spiritual, artistic, cultural, intellectual, psychological experience. So when I say remove the pews, I'm not saying everybody should remove their pews. Some pews are just fine. Some pews aren't attached to the floor. But I am saying that we need to do what Jesus did. We need to destroy the old temple and to make space new, to open space anew, to look at it differently, to say that we are not idolatrizing this space so much as treasuring it and using it. So the theological removal of the pews from our minds, our hearts, our theologies will make them more biblical, finally. You see, bricks relate to mortals in right relationship when we don't have one more important than the other, when treasure and earthen vessel are properly balanced. Or as Jesus said to the religious authorities, and of course they didn't like it, where you're not more important than God. That your ways of being are not more important than the divine, where the divine is always more important than you. Where first and foremost we are worshiping God, not each other, or our beautiful artifacts, or our pews, or the way it always was. The way it always was just something for one time. When we remove the pews, we put bricks and mortals in right relationship with each other. We are more biblically coherent and true. We are more morally proportional. We're not trying to ignore God so much as create a space of beauty for us to worship God, God's house, a house of prayer, a place that points like a good steeple does to what's better, more beautiful, and higher than we are. The theological removal of pews from our minds and our hearts is also a way of avoiding idolatry. There's a Japanese temple that tears itself down every 20 years and rebuilds itself. Why? They don't want to become too attached to the beauty of the wood, and the temples are each time more beautiful. Removing the pews from our theologies is also, I'm going to call it appropriately incarnational. It really imitates Jesus' connection of spirit and matter It also gives us a chance to declutter the place every now and then. Have you ever noticed how some churches look like 1954 all the time? That is unfortunate and makes people who weren't alive and well and happy in 1954. I'm not accusing 1954 of anything. I'm just saying that decluttering our spiritual space is important. Grandma's couch may be important, but the youth group shouldn't still be using it. A lot of us pastors have a constant joke, which is somebody will call up and say, we're redoing our basement room now that the kids are gone, and we'd like to send over all the furniture. I know the youth room will love it. Well, no, the youth room won't love it. In an attempt to be beautiful with our sacred spaces, we often become very time-bound. And the final argument I'll make, and I'm making all of these arguments really quick, is that spiritual flexibility is a really good thing. Everybody wants to know how to get young people involved. The place needs to welcome them. The place needs to feel like their home, not grandma's home. So the theological removal of those pews from our minds does exactly what we've done here at Judson Memorial Church, where I'm speaking from, and you've seen the space, you've seen a picture of it. Before I started, you've seen the chairs stacked on the wall. You've seen the open space that allows us to set this big room for 20 people or 350 and have it be beautiful. That allows us to have dance in here. Modern dance, postmodern dance, beautiful dance, dancers. The only thing that this congregation ever spent real money on, because they're kind of cheap like every other congregation. Oh, I know a guy, he knows how to fix the toilet. That's why the toilet doesn't work for more than 6 months. But they put real money into this sprung wood dance floor to appreciate the arts, to allow people to use a sacred space for more than worship. And notice I didn't say more than just worship, but to blend the sacred and the spiritual in a place. And all that was removing the pews, which we did in 1969, because some dancers in Greenwich Village needed a place to dance. And our theology said art is a part of God, treasure, earthen vessel. Artists are our community here in Greenwich Village. Why would we not make space for them? Who is your neighbor? A congregation relates to its neighbor and it finds people. A congregation refuses to relate to its neighbor and people don't come. So Judson is a model of, and I can brag about it because I didn't create it, I just maintain it. I've been here 15 years and it has been a blast to receive an open floor space. We can set the room differently every time we want to. We can have a lot of fun in this room. And what that means is that people feel welcome and not overwhelmed by spiritual inflexibility or somebody that's poured concrete over the divine. Judson is not the only place that has done this. The congregation, UCC congregation in Newport, Rhode Island also did it when they got down to get ready for the 7 members, and they said maybe we should do something a little different. They opened the space. They happen to have the same gorgeous Lafarge windows that we have. Theirs are geometric instead of Christian, representational. And by the way, we are thinking of using some modern technologies of digital printing to get rid of all the white faces that the beloved John Lafarge left us with up here, and putting in some new saints over it. We would never destroy this important art, but in the spirit of people taking down statues that make other people feel like they don't belong. Imagine going to a courthouse in Virginia and some Confederate soldier is outside the courthouse and you're black and you're there to get justice. I wonder how that makes you feel. Or I wonder what it feels like to be in this room with every one of these white Christians represented as not your skin color. You can see on the other side that we have made just some posters of modern saints, Saint Divine, Saint Ailey, Saint Frida Kahlo, Saint James Baldwin, etc. We want the place to be godly in its welcome. If it gets stuck in any century or any aesthetic or any beauty, it does not represent God. One of the most powerful things that happened last year was the burning of the cathedral in Paris, Notre Dame. Terrible fire. Brought people from all over the world to their knees. Oh my God, we said. All that beauty gone. Those firefighters, and I can't believe I'm talking to you all about fire from New York City. Forgive me. Those firefighters that risked their lives to save some of the icons in the cathedral, that showed what a treasure in earthen vessel it is. But did you watch the conversation that then ensued? It was amazing. People began a conversation, and it's not over in France, about whether they should reproduce the cathedral in exactly the same way it was built. Bring it back as it was. Do you feel the spiritual inflexibility of that? Or create something new on that holy ground. You know what I think we should do. And I'll conclude with an example from another famous French cathedral, the one at Chartres, which tried to fall apart and just had so much delayed maintenance that its 12th century beauty was genuinely threatened. They have raised the money to restore it, and they're doing a magnificent restoration. I've been several times back in the days when we could fly. And they have done something else. So sometimes the answer is not remove these pews, but do something over here. It's not any one thing that makes you spiritually flexible and open space for the new and the next. But it is doing something. At Chartres, the French are really good at light shows. They made a light show that literally copied every piece of art, every statue, inside and outside the building. Digitally photographed it. And when you go there, at 8 o'clock at night, they put up the light show on the outside of the cathedral, which shows you what it was like in its original vibrancy. It was tremendously vibrant. But also they add the most interesting hip-hop music, all kinds of jazz. And so for about an hour at dusk, you see the ancient cathedral lit outside. And the slogan for their capital campaign was Lumière retrouvée. The light returns. It returns in a new form. Remove the pews. Let the light return in a new form. Prove Jesus was right about the right relationship between beauty, bodies, and spirit. Amen.